This is the second week of our 7-week series on Win the Day by Batterson. And today our focus is Kiss the Wave. And what does it mean to kiss the wave? Well, it means noticing responses to what life brings to you. Coming to grips with what really is reality. Knowing that your explanations are more important than your experiences. And releasing any scar tissue so that you truly can win the day. Last week I said if we become paralyzed by things in the past or things in the future that we can't change, then it becomes difficult to live in the moment. So this week I want to talk about how we respond to those things that we cannot change, like waves in the ocean. Imagine what might happen if you started right now to know that your response to life events is essential to your own happiness. So, first, the question of the week. What is the one choice that you can make today to kiss the wave, to be responsible, and to bury dead yesterdays so as to win the day? One more time. What's the one choice that you can make today to kiss the wave, to be responsible, and to bury dead yesterdays so that you can win the day? With a title like Kiss the Wave, I'm certain everyone is thinking about the ocean. Did you ever go swimming in the ocean? When I was a little girl, I used to love to ride the waves and to play in the water. And now that I'm older, what I really enjoy is actually just walking along the edge of the water and allowing those waves to just hit my feet rather than actually playing in the waves. I tried riding the waves a couple years ago and the result wasn't pretty. A wave came in, knocked me over, knocked me off balance, and I got to laughing so hard with my sister that it was hard to get up before the next wave came in and would knock me over again. I have to say about that event that I was certain that I was a great spectacle of laughter for the people that were sitting on their balconies watching. And gratefully, no one posted it on YouTube. But nowadays, I just walk along the edge of the ocean. And occasionally, I admit that I get so lost in my thoughts that a big wave will come and actually splash me, sometimes getting my pants wet or damp. And the wave is just being a wave. So I can't really fault the wave for what happened. And I've learned not to fault myself either for being lost in the beauty of just walking along the ocean. It's merely life happening. So I think that's what today is all about allowing life to happen and to just be okay with it. In our announcements, the quote this week was from Batterson's book. And in case you missed it, this is what it said. You may not be responsible, but you are response-able. I think what Mark was trying to tell us is to notice our responses to things. We're not responsible for the ocean's wave, and our response to it can be fun or disaster depending on circumstances and our response. Batterson in his book tells a story about a man whose name was Joseph Merrick. Joseph Merrick was born in England in 1862, and he was born with a lot of deformities in a time where medicine didn't really know a whole lot about helping with those situations. He eventually became the headliner in a human novelty exhibition. Posters pronounced him as the Elephant Man, half elephant, half man. He was very disfigured, and his speech was so garbled that no one could really understand what he was trying to say. And when people would walk into the tent where he was the headliner, they would scream and run out. When a surgeon, whose name was Dr. Teeves, wandered into the human circus, He noted that Merrick was truly one of the most disgusting specimens of humanity that he had ever seen. but he didn't scream or shrink away. Instead, he was empathetic, and he actually gave Merrick his business card. And that was one of the things that was found on Merrick a while later when the human circus had disbanded, and they found him in a train station, cowering in a corner like a wounded animal. So the police brought him to Dr. Teves, and he spent the rest of his years in the London hospital in the care of that doctor. His first few experiences were a lot like the circus. Dr. Teves ordered some food for him, but forgot to explain to the orderly his situation and what he was going to look like. So she went into the room and saw him drop the tray and screamed and ran out. As time passed, however, the staff grew accustomed to his appearance. So Dr. Teves decided to try an experiment. He sent a woman into Merrick's room and told her to just smile at him, wish him good morning, and ask to shake his hand, which she did. Dr. Teves recorded what he witnessed, and it wasn't what he was expecting. Here are his words. The effect upon poor Merrick was not quite what I had expected. As he let go of her hand, keeping his head on his knees, he sobbed until I thought he would never cease. Teves goes on to say in his notes, he told me afterwards that this was the first woman who had ever smiled at him, and the first woman in the whole of his life who had shaken hands with him. The smile was the tipping point. And Dr. Teves wrote, he began to change little by little from a hunted thing into a man. As time went on and Dr. Teves listened to Merrick more and more, he began to understand his speech, and he actually noted that he was quite intelligent. Merrick was an avid reader. He read the Bible and other books, and so Dr. Teves started bringing him in books. He also began to smuggle him into private boxes of the London Theatre, where Merrick was able to watch theater and opera. He would also take him out to the countryside, where Merrick got a chance to just listen to the birds and watch the squirrels and pick wildflowers and have a life that was a little bit more normal. Dr. Teves wrote in his book later that Merrick said, I am happy every hour of the day. I am happy every hour of the day. Merrick died at age 27, and Dr. Teves eulogized his infamous Elephant Man this way. His trouble had ennobled him. He showed himself to be a gentle, affectionate, and loving creature without a grievance and without any unkind word for anyone. I never heard him complain. It seems incredible that such a man as Merrick never complained and actually told Dr. Teves that he was happy every hour of the day. He couldn't change his circumstances. He couldn't change the way he looked or his speech. They were his wave, and he had to learn to kiss it, to accept it. They were his obstacles, and his response to those obstacles was first to feel trapped, until a simple smile and a handshake changed his life. The waves can knock us down, and they can keep us down, or we can learn to kiss them, to embrace what is, and respond as Merrick did by choosing to be happy every hour of the day. If someone who lived his life, a big portion of his life, being so incredibly mistreated, can still say that he was happy every hour of the day, what an example is that? Is there truly anything in your life that is worse than having the appearance of the Elephant Man? Last week, I encouraged you to come to grips with who you really are, to recognize yourself as a priceless masterpiece of the divine, and to live from that place knowing that no masterpiece of the divine is incapable of anything. It's time to kiss the wave, to live from the joy of your being. The obstacles we encounter are just that, obstacles. They don't have to be the enemy. In fact, we might choose to look at them as opportunities or lessons. Last week we talked about flipping your script, about the stories that you tell and what those explanations bring into your life. It really is time to recognize that your explanations are more important than your experiences. Look at Merrick. I'm sure he often was telling himself he was a freak until he flipped the script when someone shook his hand and smiled at him. He was no longer the wounded animal. He embraced being happy. As Debbie was reading today, when we find ourselves in difficult situations, we can become so focused on the way out that we fail to learn from the journey. I know you heard her say it, but let me say it one more time. When we find ourselves in difficult situations, we can become so focused on the way out that we fail to learn from the journey. It's a bit like being so focused on the future that we fail to notice the flowers that are along today's pathways. I do believe that everything in life provides a lesson for us to learn. And I believe that how we spin things with our language, what our explanations are, is more important than what we experience. Have you ever been with somebody on an outing and later learned that while you were enjoying yourself immensely, they were actually feeling a little bit tortured or maybe bored? I myself love going to the theater, so when I go to the theater with people, I just assume that all of them love it as much as I do, which is actually not the truth. I found out recently that one of my good friends doesn't really enjoy the theater, and yet I had invited him to go to shows more than once. We each have our own likes and dislikes. It's how we respond to our life when obstacles show up. The theater example is not the same as an obstacle in life that we face, perhaps loss of a job or rent coming due and wondering if you're going to have the means to pay it. These are experiences in which your explanations become very important. If you need money for rent, and your story is that you have always had struggle paying for your bills, what you're putting out there is that you've always had struggles paying for your bills, and the universe said, okay, I can give you more of that. It's not what we want. The universe continues to allow us to struggle for money until we actually recognize that that's not truly the source of our income or the source of our happiness or the source of the joy in our life. I'm not making light of losing a job or of having hard times in your life. And yet, if your explanations become that you know that money is coming as long as you continue to move your feet, that money will show up. I absolutely believe that. I love in the reading that it said, every testimony starts with a test. To get to the great story, the testimony of how great things are, we often have to pass the test. We can go about blaming God for things, blaming situations. Hey, I've been there, and I've done it a time or two in my life. Or we can recognize that there is a lot of truth to beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. In fact, I would say everything is in the eyes of the beholder. We see the world as we are. Have you ever noticed that when you're feeling happy and something happens, but you're really deep down happy, it doesn't bother you all that much? But when you're having a day where there seems to be a lot of challenges, even a little thing like somebody cutting you off in traffic can just seem terribly huge and uncomfortable. Think about that for a second. Wayne Dyer sums it up this way. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. We do indeed create the world we live in by how we respond to those things that happen to us and around us. I used to love this poster that I had in my office. It was a saying from Gandhi. Love as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were going to live forever. Isn't it about time we start learning from all the opportunities placed in our paths, rather than looking at them as obstacles? We can ask, what might we learn from this? When I was about 30, I fell down a flight of cement steps on Christmas Eve in a home we had just moved into 3 weeks earlier. I was in a hurry to get to the basement to get Santa ready for the kids, and I wasn't aware that the steps were as steep as they were. I tripped on the second step and fell all the way down 11 steps to a landing. It was a cement landing, and at the time, I had knocked myself out for just a few seconds, I guess. The doctor insisted that I needed to stay at the hospital. Of course, I was having none of that. My kids were 3 and 5, and they were going to have Santa in the morning, so I was going home. What I do remember him saying is that there would most likely be some scar tissue that would impact me later in life. Well, it's later in life, that's come, and there is a spot under my left shoulder that has a lot of scar tissue, and it itches quite frequently, actually. I've learned to deal with it, but it's a reminder of that fall and how long our bodies can retain injuries. And it's not just physical scars that our bodies retain. They retain those emotional, those relational, those spiritual scars that have happened in our life. In practitioner training, one of the exercises that we have to do is to write our own funeral ceremony, and it has to include an obituary. It's interesting to try to put your life into a few words and ferret out what you would want people to remember about you. But it also had me remembering the times in my life when I had been less than the person I would have liked to have been. There was scar tissue there. Deep wounds that were hanging on, places I had yet to forgive myself. Things that had happened years and years ago, and yet they were still alive in me. I had yet to bury those yesterdays. It's amazing how long scar tissue can actually hang on. The way to release the scar tissue is not necessarily an easy solution. It is, however, one word: forgiveness. Failure to release the scars of the past limits our range of motion. It has us being reminded regularly of pain, and it steals from us the ability to experience our lives fully and to live in joy. So how do we let go? In his book, Batterson tells of the funeral process that Steve Jobs gave for the OS 9 operating system when the Mac OS was coming out. The funeral actually involved music, a casket, and some very important things that he's had to say about the OS 9, a eulogy for it. Batterson also tells of the New York Jets coach, Ryan, burying a football in their practice field with all the players present after they had a horrible loss of 45-3 to the New England Patriots. That worked. 6 weeks later, the Jets actually beat the Patriots in a playoff game. I think that the truth is that sometimes we need to bury our yesterdays by intentionally burying them, by creating some kind of a ritual for ourselves. Some of us do that at the beginning of the year. We have a burning bowl ceremony where we write the things that we want to let go of and we tear them up and burn them. It's good sometimes to have a visual of something happening and actually intentionally let it go. In our Science of Mind philosophy, there can be a tendency to see the good, to release and let go, when way deep down we continue to hang on to something. It's not about the surface letting go. It's about doing the work of forgiveness, to let it go, to truly release it. In every obstacle, the real enemy can be ourselves, not recognizing the opportunity that we have to grow stronger. Stronger physically, stronger emotionally, relationship-wise, spiritually. In every obstacle, there is an opportunity. Now, I don't advocate cutting short the grieving process. We certainly need to grieve our losses, and that's a personal time frame for each and every individual. On the other hand, perhaps it's time to get past the past and move on to living your life today fully. I'm curious about what in your yesterdays might you need to be releasing. Is there something that needs healing? Something that perhaps a mock funeral might help you lay to rest so that you can get on with the healing process. Batterson reminds us in his book that the beginning words of the Tale of Two Cities are this: it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief. It was the epic of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. And it goes on, but Batterson implies that we live in two worlds. While we would much rather live only in the best of times, with wisdom and light, we can forget that life is a two-sided coin. In my life, what I've learned is that the best of times come because I've made it through the storm. I've made it through the worst of times. I know my wisdom today is because of the foolishness of my past. Those things in my past that I did that were a little bit less than wise. Those times when I relied on me rather than just turning it over to God. I know light can actually move into a place of darkness, can be shown there, and the darkness disappears. So let us live in the spring of hope by burying those winters of despair. Let us learn that we have everything before us, and if we want to get to a good night's rest and be ready for tomorrow, we can just turn any of our obstacles over to God every night. Remember, God's awake 24/7. Turn your obstacles over to God when you lay your head on the pillow. Think of 3 things for the day that you were grateful for. Let go and let God. And to take some more advice from Gandhi, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So in summary, notice this week how you're living. Learn to kiss the wave and be responsible. Be more like Joseph Merrick, happy for every hour of the day. Know that your explanations are more important than your experiences. Remember that every testimony starts with a test. Ask where the lessons or opportunities exist in the obstacle. Release the scar tissue. Practice forgiveness for yourself and for others. Bury your yesterdays. Use mock funerals or other means and put in the effort. Make what you say and what you do in harmony with what you think. So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it today I so easily and willingly make the one choice to kiss the wave, to be responsible, and to bury dead yesterdays so we can win the day? I'd like to challenge you this week to actually kiss the wave. Take that opportunity to see in the obstacle that there really is a lesson, and be aware of your responses and your reactions to things. Just notice how you do in the evening. And challenge yourself really when you go to sleep at night to find some things for which you're grateful, and give all the rest of the stuff over to the divine. And just see how you did. Let's pray. So we take a deep, nourishing breath, and we kiss this wave of the divine experience that we're having on this planet. We know that each of us, in essence, is a divine being filled with all that God is, that love, that joy, that peace, that freedom, that ease, that grace. What I know is that the experiences that we're having are all about how we see life. We see life as we are. I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for this community. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to talk about kissing the wave and recognizing that the things in our life just truly are part of the experience that we're meant to have. And that we can choose the experience we are having by how we explain it. And I'm grateful to know that the divine is in every one of those experiences. It's from all that gratitude that I release this word into the law of mind, spirit, and action, because I know the divine has already called it good. So I can just say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is.